I got the okay from my cameraman, so I think we're good to go. Thank you everybody for joining us today. I'm sorry, I'm realizing I'm really short. We might have to get me a box. I don't want to stand for an hour. I'm not going to do it. So I just have a little bit that I want to say here, and then we're going to get rolling with our panel. Really, thank you so much for joining us today. This is a casual conversation. I will give you all time to ask questions once we get a little bit into the panel. There are plenty of refreshments. Bathrooms are back here at the back of the office, so feel free to get up and leave as you guys need to. So welcome to the Bethesda Green Innovation Center Summer Speaker Series, where we tackle environmental challenges through sustainable entrepreneurship. During this series, we're discussing ideas that impact people, the planet, and profits. In case I haven't had a chance to introduce myself, I am Emily Bernard. I'm the program manager of what's called the Innovation Center at Bethesda Green. And I really appreciate you guys joining us for the first session of the Summer Speaker Series, where today we will discuss how we are advancing solar energy solutions across DC, Maryland, and Virginia. So just quickly, I'd like to take a minute to introduce you to our work here at Bethesda Green, which we organize under two primary categories, Be Green Business and Be Green Living. The Be Green Living program elevates community engagement and enhances the quality of life for local residents. And then under our Be Green Business program, we support leaders who are building for-profit business models around sustainable and environmental solutions. We welcome mission-aligned and idea-stage startup companies to our Innovation Center. And then before we jump into today's panel, I just want to briefly acknowledge our amazing network of partners, sponsors, board members who are supporting us and all the work that we do. So thank you so much if you fall into those categories. So let's get into it. Solar energy, which powers about 3.4% of electricity generated in the US, which has become a the fastest growing electricity source. Despite its increasing popularity, the process and incentives behind its implementation are often not well understood. So in this session, we'll delve into the local implementation of solar energy in the DMV region, highlighting the roles of entrepreneurship, friendly financing, and partnerships with local utilities in advancing solar energy solutions. So just quickly, I want to introduce the panel, but I'll let them give you their bios because I don't want to speak for anybody. So today we're going to welcome Justin Aydelotte, which I quickly learned.
Nailed it.
The CEO of Good Idea Solar. Will Ellis, who is the Director of External Affairs at Pepco Holdings. And then Cindy McCabe, who is the Director of Renewable Energy for the Montgomery County Green Bank. So thank you all for being here today. Thank you. So I think just to start with, and I will start with you, Justin, if you could just give us a brief intro of who you are and who Good Idea Solar is.
Yeah, so hello everybody. Thanks for coming today. My name is Justin Aydelotte. I'm the founder and CEO of a small company called Good Idea Solar. We work with small family farms to convert a portion of their land to solar farming. And then what we end up doing is we sell that power that we generate into the local community in one of two ways. So we sell either directly to what's called the MUSH market, which is municipalities, universities, school systems, and hospitals, or in places that allow it, we sell direct to consumer through a program called Community Solar. You have that available here in Maryland, and what that allows you to do is sign up with a nice company like Pepco, and then receive essentially a benefit on your bill for anywhere from 5 to 25% off of your bill for signing up for the program.
Amazing. Thank you, Justin. And Will, do you mind providing a brief intro of yourself and of your role within Pepco?
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. William Ellis, Director of Governmental and External Affairs. I appreciate you all spending time with us today. I've been with the utility for about 2 decades, serving in numerous roles. Was born and raised right here in Washington, D.C. in the region, and been here all my life. And so I started as an intern from Pepco 20 years ago and haven't left. But we at Pepco, we serve around 1.8 million customers across the DC and Maryland region. We're not in Virginia, but in my role as director, I oversee government and external affairs for Prince George's and Montgomery County. Really our tagline at Pepco is powering a cleaner and brighter future for our customers and communities that we serve. And we really try to live by that mission, wanting to ensure that we are visible in our communities. We have the pleasure of serving our communities with the most quintessential service there is in terms of electric service. And our responsibility, how we show up in the community, whether that's through workforce development, STEM education. Right now we're in the middle of what we call our STEM Academy, where we bring 100 young women who are in high school across the DMV to the University of Maryland for a week-long camp around STEM education, hoping to educate them on energy and other sustainability efforts. So we're doing a lot, and I appreciate the time to talk to you all today.
Awesome. Thank you, Will. Very cool program. Cindy, do you mind giving a brief introduction of yourself and what you do at Green Bank?
Sure, thank you, Emily. Thanks for having me here today, everyone. Cindy McCabe, I'm Director of Renewable Energy at the Montgomery County Green Bank. We're the first county level green bank in the nation. Well, we were here a bit before the DC Green Bank, a good friend of ours. And what I do at the Green Bank is mostly connected with renewable energy, solar, because I come from a career in the solar industry myself. So I've worked for a few different solar companies in many different positions. And right now at the Green Bank, I help folks get financing for their solar or renewable energy projects. But I also help people learn about the projects, why they should or shouldn't do them, what's the best way to go about them, and who they should work with. So thank you for having me.
Of course. I'm so glad that all of you are here. I think we'll start up with a real easy question. How can we encourage more residents and businesses in the DMV area to go solar? And then kind of with that, what are those challenges that we're facing in reaching widespread solar? And feel free to take it, whoever wants to jump on it first.
I guess I'll go. All right, yeah. The big thing that we found is just by talking about it. At its core, solar power, if done right, is something that should benefit everybody. So it should benefit your community. It should be a way for people to lower their energy bills. It should benefit the family that is hosting and allow you to kind of be able to interact with and build a stronger community. You know, if you sign up for a community solar plant in your neighborhood, you really should be able to drive past it to go look at it. And by talking about it, it brings up those opportunities, you know, to engage and build some more community consensus around it.
Yeah, you know, really quickly, and I used to oversee our solar group for about 5 years before I moved on to a new role. And I used to get from customers all the time, Will, why does Pepco help customers go solar? Doesn't that mean we just use less of your system? And so there is this misconception out there that Pepco doesn't want you to get solar because that means we use less. But in Maryland, we have a mechanism, and I won't be too technical, called decoupling, which means our revenue that we make as a utility is not based on kilowatt hour usage. So we are able to create and implement programs such as our energy efficiency programs, which helps customers conserve, as well as solar programs, which helps customers save money. But at the end of the day, we're in the business of helping our customers. And we truly believe solar does a number of great things for our customers. As you touched on, one, Justin, is helping to save money off your bill. There are some really great programs in Maryland as well as the district. One that we partner heavily on is called the Solar for All programs, focused to low to moderate income customers, helping them go solar. So touching our most vulnerable population and saying that if we can reduce your electric bill by 50%, just think of what you can do with that extra revenue, whether that's grocery shopping, whether that's clothes, whether that's a vacation for your family. And so we feel that responsibility. And so our role within solar is helping to make the process as smoothly as possible, helping to educate customers on it. You know, because we used to get a lot of questions around, I went solar, Will, why do I have a bill? Right? Well, we take for granted that solar doesn't shine at night or when it rains. And so, yes, you will still have a bill for Pepco. Or at some point in time, your roof is not big enough to put enough solar to offset your entire load. So we were one of the first utilities in the country to come up with a solar calculator, a tool where customers can go independently type in their address, it automatically uploads your yearly usage and gives you a printout of what solar would do for your home. So then you're armed when a developer or someone will come to you around solar, you have the facts and the information to be able to make that optimal choice.
Where do we find that calculator? How do we find it?
Yes, we have our solar team here that can speak with you afterwards, but if you go www.pepco.com/solar, it will be right there.
That's easy.
Yes.
Does that apply to multifamily dwellings?
Yes, it does as well.
Awesome. Cindy, anything to add there in terms of how can we encourage more people to go solar, and what are some of those challenges that they're facing in terms of getting solar implementation widespread?
So I agree with what Justin and Will said, if I can call you Will.
Yes, please.
But I wanted to add a couple things that solar can be confusing. There are a lot of options out there. There are a lot of different companies. And, if you talk to 3 different companies, you might get 3 different offers, 3 different system sizes. And how do you know which one to pick, which one is better? Are they all the same? So I think education definitely helps a lot. Having someone that's sort of like an unbiased kind of third party to help you look at it, even if you're not going to use their business, would be really helping. Standardizing things a little bit more. Someone very bright was recommending that we, and not that I had the power to do it, but that we standardize a contract for a couple of the different financing options. There's a standard PPA contract, there's a standard lease, or other things like that. And then I think a lot of transparency is needed. So making sure people know that they'll still have a Pepco bill or a BGE bill or a Potomac Edison bill, and about how much that'll be. And after the solar comes up, sitting down with them, and saying, okay, is this what you thought it would be? And how do we add it up to show you where your savings are that we told you to see? What happens when the grid goes down? Do I automatically have battery backup power? Do I have a battery or don't I have a battery? So talking about the ins and outs, the things that are a little uncomfortable, I like to do that. I like to say, let's talk about these things that might come up, because it's not always everything is great and wonderful, unless you know what to expect. Right? So you need to know what happens when the grid goes down. Right? You need to know what happens even if you don't use any electricity. How much is your bill going to be? $9? $8? Right? Because you have a customer charge. Things like that. And then there are some technical things like transformer upgrades that we could get into if anybody wants to stay late for some extra credit. But every once in a while, a part of the grid will be full of solar and need a transformer upgrade, and that can be quite expensive. So figuring out a solution for that, which we're all working on. I mean, by the way, you already know about all of this, and everyone's already working on a solution. So just adding a couple things.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. I think we're kind of going in this direction already, but especially Will, with your mentioning the solar calculator. But how can those solar energy solutions be tailored to address specific challenges for both urban and rural environments? Like things like, how is solar combating land use, energy efficiency, environmental degradation? How is it helping and hurting in some of those areas?
Perfect time.
An intro?
I think one of the things that I've seen over the last decade is how to make solar more inclusive so that everyone, because at one point it was only the people who could afford solar to get solar, so there was an equity issue built into it, and that's why I think community solar is so important. Because some folks, they can't afford to put solar directly on their rooftop, or some folks don't even have a rooftop if you live in a multifamily building or a common ownership building, or your home might not be positioned in the right way. You can have shading, it's not the right orientation, but I think community solar allows you to still be a part of this transition to adopt clean energy technologies in a way that's affordable for you. And so I think for us, we have partnered heavily to ensure that we can be a partner in community solar in the state of Maryland, and trying to make it as easy as possible on developers to be able to do that. I know, Montgomery County has some of the best programs I've seen in terms of solar co-op programs, where they leverage the buying power within the county to be able to get the best deals for our communities. And so those are just some of the things that I've seen in terms of reducing barriers to access when it comes to solar.
Yeah.
I'll piggyback off that one. So on kind of the flip side, the kind of common misconception that you hear about solar is that it's going to take all your farmland. And so it is a very intensive land use sort of application, but is not something that we're all of a sudden going to put solar panels and not be able to grow any food. And that's honestly where I think community solar is the right mix in between having a good land use policy and something that will still provide the community. It's almost, you can think of community solar almost as 21st century farm to table. Because what it does for a lot of your larger, honestly to even smaller farmers who don't make money from farming, they're able to take a portion of their land, say 5 to 10 acres, and be able to convert that over to something that generates a decent amount of return. And it helps complement the farmer so that they are now able to farm and they're able to do it profitably instead of going and finding other sources of revenue. So, it's something that, if done right with the right stewardship, is going to be something that we can marry and be able to make sure that we are preserving our agriculture the same way that we're preserving the returns for the agricultural company as well.
Absolutely. Cindy, anything to add on that?
Sure. So just to be sure, the question was, what are the common misconceptions about solar? Is that correct?
The question, no, in the nicest way. The question was, how can those solutions be tailored to address specific challenges for both urban and rural communities? So how are solar energy solutions being fitted to meet the demand of the consumers that are demanding it? And so Will kind of spoke to the perspective of low to moderate income families or potentially multi-family buildings that are struggling with not having capacity, not having roof space, not having funding. Justin spoke to the farmer's perspective of, am I really stealing your land? I'm not stealing your land. We're able to create more profit, create more revenue for you. And there's also the agrivoltaics, which I'm surprised you didn't say, but...
We'll get to that later.
Yeah.
So I could add a little bit about commercial solar.
Yeah.
So we help a lot of folks who have small commercial properties like churches or temples, mosques, or other faith communities, other nonprofits, who want to go solar, but they don't have a big attractive piece of land that some developers want. A lot of developers that I talk to want a big system or something that's getting the DC incentives. And what we do is we're able to take those small properties and figure out how to get them solar. So that's something that we tailor, I guess both urban and rural, depending upon, the more urban you get, the smaller your property is, pretty much. So we meet that market demand. There's a gap in the market for that.
Right.
And if we hear someone say, I want to do X, Y, or Z in clean energy, and I can't, that's what we try to do. We try to figure out how to make it happen.
Absolutely. Cindy, while you're speaking, can you talk a little bit to the benefits of Green Bank's financing program for both residents and commercial property owners? Why should they choose Green Bank solar financing options? Yeah.
Sure. So we have the word bank in our name, so it sounds like we're a bank. But we're only a bank in the sense that the county gave us a whole bunch of money to use to finance clean energy projects. And they gave us that money mostly to lend, not to just give away. And so why wouldn't you just go to a regular bank instead of the green bank? Well, we're able to lend at very low interest rates, almost as low as you can go, right, depending upon the project. If it's a giant project that's going to make a ton of money, we might charge you a little bit of interest, you know what I mean? Just so that we can have the ability to give a loan at almost no interest to somebody who needs it, to a small property, right, who's going to have a small solar system. So besides having lots of experts on our team like Quinn and Quinn, we're able to provide advice, recommendations, like I said before, but the big thing is the really low interest rate, much lower, substantially lower than market interest rate.
Very cool. And Will, you kind of started to talk about this, but can you talk a little bit more about the step-by-step process and where should the utility come in when you're going through the process of getting a solar installation at your property?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say at the very beginning, and that's how we want to be there to help our customers. And so a lot of the tools that we created was to be that first energy advisor, so to speak, to educate you on, is solar right for you? That's sort of the motto of what we do within our apps and websites, because we want folks to have the truth and the education around what is solar. And so that's when you can put in your usage into the calculator and it can spit out information, and then we have FAQs and that sort of thing, just to give you the basic understanding, so that when you are ready to talk to a developer, you at least have a footing to stand on, and that you just don't have to take everything anyone says for granted. You can rely on certain facts within the process. And then in most cases, once you are ready to make that choice, I do think it's best practice, if you're going solar or any home improvement project, you should get about 3 quotes to making sure that this is what's right for you. And if you're a commercial property, you should leverage the technical assistance out there, either from the Green Bank or other opportunities, to help you think through sort of what large-scale solar would do for your property. And then after that process, mainly we would interact with the developers through the application process. And so that's when we get into the process. And so typically we don't interact directly with the customers unless you're sort of doing the solar yourself, but typically you're doing it through a developer. And so we have systems and tools in place to make it easier for developers to submit applications online, to be able to submit any of the documentation on permitting or things like that. And then once you become a solar customer, we have tools to say, hey, welcome to having solar. This is what your first bill will look like. This is what you can expect from having solar on your property. And so we think it's just I think solar is just a great opportunity. It provides a lot of benefits in terms of the environmental implications it has, from reducing greenhouse gases within our community, as well as affordability. So we just want to make sure that as you go through the process, you're making the right decision as it relates to going solar.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. And Justin, I wanted to specifically ask you, what initially led you to work with farmers? And can you also talk about what led you down the entrepreneurship route? I mean, there are plenty of solar companies out there, but you took a look at it and you said, I'm going to start another one, but I'm going to do it differently.
Yeah, it's a great question. Long story short, I was a farmer. My family was, they were the second chicken farm for Frank Perdue. My dad, my mom, I grew up on an organic farm that supplied all the herbs and the specialty crops to Ocean City. So it's just been in my blood. And when I inherited the family farm in 2013, I was on my second deployment in Afghanistan. I wasn't going to go be a farmer. So it's like, well, what do I do with this thing? We kept it farming for a little while, and it didn't work out for us. We were operating at a loss. And so when we decided to take a look at what we could do to keep the family farm, to still make, an impact in our community, and to do something that was, going to be able to return profitability back to the farm, that's really what drove us to solar. So we started talking to people in the area. We've been able to get great information from industry partners, from resources like Bethesda Green, from BG&E, and we were able to talk to friends and family. And the more that we talked to people, the more we told them about this idea. They said, "Hey, this is a really good idea. Can you do this for my farm?" And honestly, that's where Good Idea Solar came from. If done right, this is something that should be able to benefit our community. It should be able to benefit the farm and the farmer, and it should be able to benefit us as well. And so that's something that at the end of the day, I think everybody's trying to do is just do something and do it well for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sir?
It would seem to me that if the numbers work well for the farmer and also for the customer who's purchasing the electricity, then you should be swamped with farms lining up saying, we're next, we want to be next.
I receive about a text message a day from people who are offering their land to develop solar. It is something that there's a lot of misconception out there that we deal with in initially getting through that first barrier of, hey, you can do this. This is something that's able to be done. And there are certain requirements that you have to meet. Namely, you have to be close to the infrastructure. You have to have enough capital to be able to deploy it, or a willing partner to help you develop the land. But at the end of the day, if you meet those wickets, it is absolutely something that, people are they're overjoyed with the opportunity to be able to do.
That word has come up a couple of times, so I'm just going to ask it directly. Talk to me about the misconceptions around solar. I know that, Will, you started to get into it a little bit around people don't always realize that they're going to get an energy bill. And I think if you could talk also to the seasonality of bills, because that's certainly a factor as well.
Yes, really quickly on the seasonality, if you have solar in your home, you probably already know this, but there are great times to have solar. We call those like the shoulder months, like April and May, when you don't need air conditioning running in your home, and that solar can just be pumping and sending energy back to the grid. You can have bill credits from solar, and those shoulder months are similar into like September, October-ish as well. But typically what we see is during those summer months, like right now when it's 100 degrees outside, like your air conditioner is running at a level where your solar can't match that pound for pound. So you're actually needing to pull from the grid during the daytime as well. And so then folks come to us, well, oh man, my solar I got a $50 Pepco bill, but I have solar. Well, yeah, you needed some of the grid to help you out when your air conditioner was set at 68. So that's just how it goes sometimes. But I think, and that's what the premise of having those tools online, so that we can model that for you even before you decide to go solar. Now you can see what your monthly expected bill will look like based on the size system you model for your rooftop. And a lot of other, Maryland as a whole, as a state, has now came up with their own solar calculator. DC has its own solar calculator. So that model now, of having this independent tool to help guide you through the process, has permeated throughout the country now. But we were one of the first to do so. And then I'll lastly just speak on the fact that, Pepco is 128 years old. Right, when we first started, a long time ago, before I was born, the grid wasn't set up to be two ways, right? Our grid was set up that you would have a power plant centrally located somewhere, and then power lines going out to customers. And energy would flow from that generation station out to customers. And so now we're in the midst of this clean energy transition and creating a two-way grid. So now instead of just having one power plant where energy flows one way, we have in the Pepco service territory, we have about 5,000 customers that have solar. So now everyone has a mini generation station on their rooftop, and they're sending power back to the grid. And that has engineering implications that we have to invest in the system, or upgrades may be needed in the system. So I think there's a misconception that says, oh, well, Pepco is trying to charge me money to go solar. No, we have to make investments now to ensure that your solar doesn't blow up a transformer or doesn't start a fire at your neighbor's house. We want you to go solar, yes, but the grid may need an upgrade based on how much solar is on that feeder or how much solar you want on your rooftop.
Cindy.
I had a quick question
Yeah.
about that. Thank you for sharing. This is great.
Yeah.
I was curious, obviously we all know that climate change is a major factor. And I was in New Jersey when Sandy hit, and it just blew out a lot of folks and not being able to have access to electricity. What's being done here in Montgomery County, state of Maryland, the DMV, to be able to mitigate any potential challenges that are occurring due to climate change? So, we may say that we have, I think you said was September, October, and then May and April, but things may blow up even then too. I'm just curious what's being put in place.
I'll start and let you all chime in. Climate change is definitely real. We're experiencing it every day. Just last month, we had 5 tornadoes touch down in central Maryland and Montgomery County. Like unheard of when I was a kid to have a tornado in Gaithersburg. But that's where we're at as facing climate change. But I think what we're seeing in this industry is the pairing of solar with battery storage. To be able to allow our customers and communities to be more resilient. So now you can have your solar, charge your battery, and if there is an extreme weather event, that battery can give you like 72 hours of backup power. Montgomery County has been a leader in the country in terms of what we call the installation of microgrids. A microgrid is nothing but having a battery and solar to be able to be self-sufficient from a power standpoint during severe weather events. There is a case study where Montgomery County's animal shelter, they would have lost power about a year ago when the plane crashed into our power lines. You remember that story. But because they had, they not only had solar, but they had a battery attached, they could run for those 6 hours in their animal shelter off the battery. So I think that's really going to be where not only for commercial customers, but also for residential customers, where once you start to pair battery storage with solar, that's where you really see the resiliency benefits that are needed in a lot of our communities.
Yeah, thanks. Touching on battery storage, the MEA, or the Maryland Energy Administration, has a grant for resiliency hubs. And there are resiliency hubs around the area, but we need a lot more. And so the MEA will pay a certain amount, it's about a third on average of the cost of the total project, to have a community room in your building where people can come when the power goes down to get heating, cooling, charge electronics, refrigerate anything that needs to be refrigerated, like medicine or breast milk or something like that. But you might say, well, a third is nice. Well, where's the rest of the money? Well, if anyone needs some financing, where we are. We also have a resiliency director now, my colleague Laura, and she's working with a lot of the municipalities to figure out measures that we need to be taking, not only for solar, but water, stormwater management, things like that, things like urban heat mapping. If you are more interested, you can look at the county's climate action plan, and it goes through every measure that we need to take, and solar is just but one. But there's a lot that we need to do. We need to make the buildings more energy efficient. We finance that as well. You touched on our technical assistance program, which I forgot to mention. If there are any buildings, commercial buildings, that don't know if they're energy efficient or not, what they need to do to get up to standards, we can actually provide some grant assistance to get energy audits done, to figure out where you're spending your energy and what you can do to save more energy.
Justin, anything to add on climate extreme weather events?
Yeah, and kind of taking a step back. So we work, again, on a little bit bigger scale than the residential. Stuff that we're seeing is now, for example, a housing developer will want to come in and put on-site solar for their houses that they want to put in, either on top or kind of their own mini commercial power plant in the back. There are a couple of case studies that have come out specifically around Hurricane Ian when that came through about Fort Myers, Naples, of climate resilient facilities or climate resilient towns that had built solar and had been able to survive without any sort of interruption whatsoever. So that is the sort of stuff that we're seeing and are actively pursuing to do our part in help make our communities better.
Yeah, and just to add while we take questions, we've been throwing out some terms like microgrid or resiliency hubs. Just want to make sure you will have that kind of background. But a microgrid is really an electric term, right? A microgrid says that I can have electricity, I can have power without having the Pepco grid to serve as your primary source, right? If anything happens in an extreme weather event, my microgrid can serve me power for a certain amount of time. A resiliency hub is a function of a microgrid, but it's much more. When we think about resiliency and what you need to shelter in place in an extreme weather event, you need more than just power because you need water. So what happens if there's a water issue? So resiliency hubs typically have water filtration, they have other services besides just being a microgrid.
Thanks for that, Will. Yes.
I just want to follow up some of the comments about storage and basically about solar plus storage, especially at the residential level, and that most people don't know that when the power goes out at the street, even if you have solar on the roof, you do not have any power. And back when Pepco was less reliable, back during derecho and various other weather events, I had solar since 2009, and I didn't have power for 5 days, even though it was a bright sunny day. So solar storage is a definite resilience issue. My question for Cindy is this something that the Green Bank is helping to help finance? Is there more storage? I know you mentioned resilience hubs, but how about direct investment in storage on facilities?
Sure, so for commercial properties that are looking to finance storage or solar and storage, we can definitely help. For residential, so we're actually restricted from lending residentially. We work with other lenders like credit unions that are in the area, especially those that are environmental. So as long as they can include solar and storage, which all the ones that we work with right now do. I'm not sure if they can do storage alone. Is that what you were referring to? Storage alone? Solar and, oh yeah, they all do that. They all do that, for sure.
And just to kind of piggyback off that, one of the things that we are starting to pilot is batteries can be those Tesla Powerwalls, but also batteries can be a vehicle. We have a lot of EVs in Montgomery County, and so we are starting to pilot vehicle to grid. So to be able to leverage the energy that's stored in your EV to power your home or to power the grid. You probably saw those Ford F-150 Lightning commercials as a guy plug in his truck to power his home. And we're having some test cases right now that we are about to pilot with Toyota, as well as the Montgomery County school system and their electric EV buses to provide sort of a community resiliency, leveraging the electric buses we have in Montgomery County, because again, in the summertime, they're just sitting there. And so how do we maximize the use cases of this technology? Like these buses can be deployed if we have a strategic weather event somewhere that can provide power to a whole community. So those are just some of the things we're piloting right now.
And Maryland just passed the DRIVE Act, which is going to require Pepco to provide bidirectional EV storage.
Absolutely.
And hopefully in the future, we can all share our stored energy.
Right.
Yes.
Right. So the microgrid isn't just one home. It's a whole block, a whole city that shares the energy when the power goes down. Basically, if the power goes down and Pepco has to come out and fix the grid, no energy can be flowing back in there, or the workers can get hurt.
Exactly.
So we need to shut off the solar systems unless there's a place for that electricity to go back to a battery, just in case anyone wasn't clear on that. A lot of people don't know.
That's a great point.
There's a hand in the back there.
Hi, I'm Mike Kennedy. Will, I think this question is for you regarding microgrids. I have several pretty large potential microgrid projects. And when I first talked to Pepco, there wasn't anyone really to talk to about that specifically. Is there someone now at Pepco who works on that? Because several of them also have potential for resilience.
Yeah, absolutely. I have two very smart engineers that are in the room. Alex Remore right there in the blue, and Luan Watson in the tan suit right there. But we have a team that specializes in microgrids and solar plus storage, but we're definitely ready to assist you.
Okay, so these guys are the guys to...
Absolutely. And I'm an engineer too, even though I work in government affairs, but I'm here to help.
Thank you.
Awesome.
There's another question.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I live in a high-rise condo community, and the ratio of space on the roof compared to the per unit in the building is not very good. So my question is, the developers, are they pitching the high-rises, or is this just not enough roof coverage for them to invest in their time into developing solar projects for?
I would say yes but most of the work right now that's going into multifamily housing, unless it's a small ratio of apartments to roof size, is going into community solar. And what it allows you to do is essentially take an unlimited amount of space relatively, and you buy, for lack of a better term, you buy into that community solar portion. So you almost have a panel or two or four, however much your energy need is, that is yours, and the power is earmarked for you, and then you are entitled to the renewable energy credits and the discount to your power that would facilitate.
If you send me an email, I can take a look at the property and let you know if you have any options for parking lot canopy, which is expensive. So we'd have to talk about the options for financing that. But there are companies who want to do parking lot canopies, and they're very nice looking if you guys have driven past them.
They're actually redoing the parking garage, which is underneath, and there's a parking lot on top. And they don't know if the supports are strong enough to put up a canopy on the lot, which is above the garage.
Someone could check it out.
Are you sure you know?
I'll give it to you later if you don't
Okay.
mind. Save time.
In lieu of that, when I first moved to my first apartment in 2017, the first thing I did was signed up for community solar. And so it's just a simple solution that works seamlessly.
Justin, you have a great point. So you can actually have solar on, you don't own your roof, but for those that own a roof, you can have solar on your roof. You can get a community solar subscription if you need more solar, and you can get a third-party energy supplier, so you could have bumper-to-bumper solar. They don't usually, in very rare cases, you're restricted from getting more than one. But the most of the third-party energy suppliers will let you get a community solar subscription and have rooftop ground mount parking lot canopy solar. They don't restrict each other.
Yeah, I think it's a great time. Hi, Zach Bogue. I'm a venture capitalist, but really excited about decarbonization efforts, and do a lot of community solar for New England. And we just got an allotment for this area, Pepco area. In fact, about 1.7 million kilowatt hours annually, and very much interested in anyone with low moderate income too. And so, we're looking for subscribers for that. So I'd love to know if there's anyone you know where I could bring that allotment to, I like the fact that you can stack the value. I wasn't aware of the stacking aspect. We also are giving away free Tesla Megapack batteries to qualified sites. It's easier up in New England because we have excess hosting capacity maps that are just right there. When you get into the Pepco region and the Maryland, it's hard to find those maps. But if there's enough excess hosting capacity, we give multi-million-dollar batteries for free for folks to buildings, and then you can stack that, as you were saying, so you get the resiliency, plus you can get those unbilled savings through the community solar until people figure out if they can make the investment for the canopy or if they have enough rooftop space that fits the criteria. So love to know where we could bring this allotment to and facilitate this effort in this area.
Yeah, we'll make it work.
Also, wanted to mention, I love, you heard it here first, but farmland is probably worth more than gold. And we have a case study with the University of Michigan where if you have about like a 10,000 acre farm, and you're growing corn, when you do the econometrics, you get around $9 million from that. If you do it incorporating insurance benefits and carbon credits, we can show how you can get $3 million more with the same crop, the same land. And so if you have access to farmland, hold it. And it's not just about farming carbon, but you can actually make it accretive to the other things that are grown on the land. So if you're interested in any of that, I'm here.
Awesome. Thank you, Ben. Mike, yeah.
I have a question for Cindy. I'm hoping you can help me with some homework. I have a large medical technology company that owns 14 buildings in Montgomery County, it happens. And so they need to keep their electricity going. They've been reluctant because REITs couldn't create enough value. They couldn't trade carbon credits or maybe take advantage of the ITC. But I'm in an effort, I'm asking you, I guess, if you know more about the law in Maryland that now allows REITs more advantage to take advantage of, is it carbon credits or is it the investment tax credit?
Are you saying REITs?
REIT.
Real estate investment trusts.
Okay.
Usually the people that own the buildings. They own.
Yeah, this is a big company that owns buildings.
Okay.
It's like Fannie Mae for real estate.
Okay.
Yeah, and I guess you're not going to be able. I guess you probably aren't going to know about the law in Maryland that was passed. I've been trying to get information about it, but that allows REITs to take more advantage by being able to trade carbon that they didn't used to be able to do, and take advantage of the investment tax credit. The reason REITs weren't, just to tell you something about it, weren't able to do that is that REITs are structured, they're real estate entities that are structured in a way that all of the profits and tax advantages or losses go to their members. So because of that structure, they weren't able to take advantage of any of these new potentials. So I guess I need to talk to my guy who's nodding his head up there.
Mike,
are you in these things.
Are you saying that they don't have taxable income to take the tax credit? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. You don't have to have taxable income anymore to take the tax credit.
Okay,
We have directive pay,
but I didn't know
elective
how it worked,
pay.
and I wonder
I
if
know
you
how it
know
works.
more about that.
I know how it works. Yeah.
Let's maybe take
Okay.
that. Let's maybe take that offline, Mike. It sounds like Cindy does know how that works, so she can talk to you
And
separately.
we're gonna have a
about that.
webinar about it soon too.
Oh, that's cool. When is that coming up?
We haven't scheduled it yet, but you'll be the first to know.
I will be the first to know, and you'll be the second, Mike.
Oh, you will.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'd like to know some standard math on projects. For example, somebody has a townhouse.
Sure.
How much electricity are they using per month? How many kilowatt hours? What are they paying? If the roof is suitable for solar, they put it on. What is the benefit to them? Who's going to finance it? What is the end result to the customer? You must have many examples from having done many of these. You have a row of 4 townhouses in a row. If everybody does it, if it's economical for the installation, because you're going to go from roof to roof to roof with your installation team. You do 4 units. What do the numbers look like?
Am I taking this one?
Yeah.
So how much money are they saving? Is that your question?
Well, that
How much
would
money are they
be the
saving?
end result. Yes,
Okay.
I suppose.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, I will tell you that every house uses electricity different. Would you agree with me?
Absolutely.
I have an expert here on consumption. Every house uses electricity different. So it's hard to say how much solar they'll be able to offset from their yearly consumption. Okay, but I do have an example. I can send it to you. I ran an example with the ownership option. So the next question is, does this person who lives in this townhouse want to own their solar system or rent it? Right, because you'll save the most money for a resident going solar if you own your solar system. You can keep all your incentives yourself. The highest return on investment, it might take a few years, but you'll get the highest return on investment if you own it and you pay it with your bank account, your cash, your own resources. You don't have to take out a loan. That's the best way. The second best way, because a lot of us don't have a large bank account that we're willing to use on solar, is if you finance it with a low finance rate, then you'll get the next best return on investment because you'll get all of your own.
And what is that
incentives.
return on investment roughly?
Usually the average I've seen, Justin tell me, is about 9 years.
I think it's, last I heard is 8.1.
Okay,
Yeah, so it's coming
So
down.
that's the payback before you break even.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you save after that? What's the return on investment over like the 20 years?
I don't have an average.
So
amount.
what's the-
depends upon the size of the system. It depends upon how much electricity you're going to use. Depend upon.
There's a lot of variables.
And that's the premise of why we created a calculator, right? Because based on how much roof space you have in your home, based on how much energy you use at a home, right? You could, I live in a 3,300 square foot house, and the solar calculator spits out a number for me in terms of what's going to be my payback, what's the typical cost of an investment you may see. So the calculator has a lot of great information to that. But that looks very differently if that same 3,000 square foot house has a pool in its backyard, right? That looks very differently if that same house is all electric versus heated by gas. And so all of those factors come into play, in which these YR2s are very important.
But can't some of these numbers fluctuate depending on what the rates are going forward?
And so then you have
don't know that.
the added variability is that when you go out to get quotes, each quote's going to be likely be different. I got a quote. I got a quote last year for solar for my home, and my quote ranged between a low of like 34,000 and a high of 47,000. Same home, same solar system. But again, different developers have different markups, different prices, different equipment, and that's why in one of the programs that I really love is the Montgomery County Solar Co-op program, where Montgomery County says
Solar Switch, it's called now.
Yeah, Solar Switch now. So they say once a quarter, who is interested in solar? Hey, and you get about 50 people raising your hand saying, hey, I'm all interested in solar. And so now all 50 people actually...
It's about 200 to 300, maybe 400, but yeah.
Yeah, receive quotes. You actually don't even have to ask for quotes. These developers will actually want to give you a quote to give you the lowest price because you're pooling buying power to be able to get the lowest. So it's a really cool program. So
Did
that
they vet the company?
They've already vetted the company.
Yes, they vet the company.
Yeah,
so.
They actually take bids from a lot of different companies. I've worked with them before a lot. And they usually select the same one or two companies that have been working with the co-op for a long time, trusted companies. Yep, for sure.
One of the questions while we're on that, almost on the developer perspective, I wanted to ask you guys, I think Will and Cindy specifically, both of you, I believe, if I've done my research, have tools or have credited developers that you work with. Can you talk a little bit about that process, and then also how do these people find those resources? Because I think that's a really key part of this process as well, is we can get so far with the people that we have here, but the last piece of the puzzle is the developer.
Well, and by developer, you don't mean a real estate developer, you mean the installer who actually installs the equipment and installs it on the house.
Yeah, 9 times out of 10 it's going to be the solar installer.
Right.
Yeah, people say developer.
Yeah.
Kind of interchangeably, but it's the solar installer.
Right.
Yeah, we've got a list of residential and commercial solar installers on our website. You want me to speak a little bit to our vetting process?
Yeah.
Okay, so we ask them how long they've been in Montgomery County, how many installations they've done. We actually ask them to list 2 or more installations that they've already done in the county so that we can check into them. We check their ratings online because I don't know about you guys, but when you have a really bad experience and you don't know what else to do, sometimes you're like, maybe I should leave a Google review and they'll actually listen to me, right? So we do check all the different reviews that they have. We make sure that they're in good standing with the state of Maryland, which you all can do if you get a quote from anyone. Check and make sure that that company's in good standing with the state of Maryland. Check all their reviews yourself. And if you still don't know, you can ask me and I can take a look at the proposals for you. I don't mind. I like looking at solar proposals. But those companies have the software that you're asking about to give you the return on investment, to give you the savings that you'll see. The only thing that they can't control is how much electricity you use in your home. So if you use a little bit now, try to continue to use a little bit so you can get those savings that they expected that you would get. If you get 2 Teslas, great, but your consumption's going to go up and your bills are going to look a little bit different.
You talked about the financing by yourself or getting a loan, but aren't there other options as well?
Right, I did mention briefly the rental options. So you can allow a solar company, an installer, or usually a developer, to own your solar system for you, and they will take out an insurance policy for your system. So all of you folks that are interested in solar, think about who's going to insure your solar system. If you own it, you have to insure it. So right now you might insure your house for a certain amount of money. Let's say your house is worth $300,000, $500,000. You have an insurance policy. That insurance policy is going to go up a little bit. Usually it's not a ton, but it's going to go up a little bit because you need to insure your home for the added value of that solar system. Whereas if you rent your solar system, that developer who owns the solar system takes out usually a $1 or $2 million policy in case anything should happen to the solar system due to an act of nature. And usually we're not worried about hail. Usually up to golf ball size hail doesn't hurt a solar system, but anything like a large tree or a tree branch, anything that would break your roof could break a solar system. Solar systems sometimes are still on there after hurricanes and tornadoes and things like that. If they're good solar systems, and they'll stay on there. But anything that could rip your roof could rip a solar system. So there are 2 ways to rent. Usually it's a power purchase agreement or a PPA and a lease. I don't know how much you guys want to talk about it. I could talk about it all night, but I won't.
No, I think it's a very great point. The only thing I would add to that is if you are thinking of leasing solar, so that's when the solar installer pays for everything and puts it on your roof, and then they send you a monthly bill for the energy that it produces. Just make sure that you're really looking at the numbers between what price per kilowatt hour you're paying them versus what were you paying to Pepco or what were you paying, because there are some horror stories that customers have told me, oh, between my bill from Pepco and the solar lease that I got to pay this company, I'm paying more than what I was paying before. So I do say make sure you're crossing your T's and dotting your I's if you're thinking of leasing.
And the Better Business Bureau too.
Yep.
I mean, they're not a government agency, but everybody uses them anyway.
Yeah. There is no regulations on how much a solar installer can charge you for the solar that they produce off your rooftop, right? There is no cap that say versus when Pepco charges you, our rates are oversaw by the Maryland Public Service Commission, right? We can't just arbitrarily decide how much to charge a customer. Whereas once you decide to go solar, whatever deal you sign with that solar developer, that's what you're on the hook for.
There was a hand.
Yeah, I was going to say, my understanding is that when solar first came out, companies would give you a contract or a 15-year contract. They would put solar in your roof. It would be for 15 years. You sign a purchase power agreement. There would be an annual escalation clause, typically about 2.8% per year. The price you paid for the electricity would go up 2.8% per year, compounded percent. And that was 15 years, and at the end of 15 years, you owned the system on your roof. After a few years, the terms that they were offering changed. There was now a 20-year commitment, and at the end of 20 years, they still own the system. Obviously, they don't really want it back, so they would try at the end of the contract to sell it to you at a very modest price because they don't want to remove it. But if you're paying 2.8% increase in the price of your electricity over 20 years, you might start out at, say, 10 cents a kilowatt hour, which would be a good rate. But it could be 20 cents or 25 cents years down the road, and you will be getting out compared to what your local electric utility might charge you for the supply.
So I believe 2.83% is the long-term inflation rate for energy. So that's why that number is pegged to that.
Well, you should be able to ask for an offer without an escalator. Yeah, anybody who gets an offer with an escalator, ask if they can do it without. it's usually a sliding ruler. I've talked to folks who are looking at two options: a little bit higher rate with no escalator, with fixed rate, and a little bit lower rate with an escalator. And I tell them, well, did you want to front load your savings, right, or did you want to spread out? Because usually it's sort of equalized, the amount of savings, is just spread a little bit differently. But I always tell people to make sure you really understand what the escalator means if you're going to sign up for it. And so you're not surprised when that rate keeps going up.
Can't Pepco charge you a varying rate going forward for your electricity? I mean, that's not a fixed number either, right?
Yes, it is.
Our rate, we do go for rate increases, right?
Right.
But our rate increases has to be approved by the Maryland Public Service Commission. We can't arbitrarily raise your rates tomorrow.
Right, but they still.
So they will go up over time.
And
right?
is that in your calculator?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, most solar installers, and Justin, of course, jump in, put in what they expect the utility to go up, and they base it on information from the U.S. Energy Information Administration's website, and it's usually somewhere between 2 and 3. If it's more than 3, tell them to lower it.
So interesting that you bring that up, because I just pulled that data this morning. That's where I know 2.83% it came from me. That being said, just like we were talking about before, all of this stuff is really kind of negotiable. And the way that we try and frame this with a customer is, hey, if we are able to provide you with a facility that is going to plug directly into your apartment building or your administrative buildings, based on the rate of inflation, here is what you can expect to save over a certain period of time. And that's what you should expect from every contractor, is to give you an idea of how much those savings are. If that's not guaranteed, Pepco's going to do it for the calculator.
If you have a solar system on the roof and the electricity goes down into the building, does Pepco charge the delivery fee on that, or is that coming straight? Is it passing through the Pepco meter? In which case Pepco may charge a distribution charge in addition to the separate from the supply.
For residential?
Residential.
Yeah, residential is behind the meter, so it doesn't go through Pepco's meter.
Okay.
Awesome. I was going to ask you guys, just kind of to wrap this up a little bit, we do have time for a few more questions if there were any burning questions in the audience. Dave has one?
Given that we're Bethesda Green and we are an incubator here, we call ourselves an innovation center, what new innovations are on the horizon in solar right now, both in the technology world, but even in the economic models for financing and such? And also, are there some growth areas for the United States to kind of pick up and create jobs in the solar market? That's a big macro question.
I'll start and let another expert go. Where I see the industry going, especially for Montgomery County, is solar windows. That is, I think, probably over the next decade, 2 decades, is where you have these more densely populated urban areas that don't have a lot of rooftop space. And so where else can you maximize solar, but you have a lot of high rises that have windows everywhere. So you see a lot of investment in that. There's also small pilots across the world, in Japan and China, and even in Washington, D.C., where you have like solar powered sidewalks. So you're leveraging the ground space of the sidewalks to have some solar built into it. So I think that's probably about 3 decades away from mass adoption. I think solar windows would probably be first.
What about other sources of energy, like kinetic energy? We've already seen successful things in South Africa, speed bumps, powering streetlights. This could be something that's scaled in large, parking lots, at a football game, at FedEx Field, formerly FedEx Field. How much are a utility company willing to, experiment or partner up with local institutions of higher learning to really, try to get some other sources besides things that rely on sunshine?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you see across the country there's a number of different energy forms that are being tested and piloted. I think one thing that's for certain, to reach the climate goals that we have in our state and our county, we're going to need a lot more renewable energy sources. So there is an appetite in the U.S. with our national labs to be able to do so. Us as an electric company, we actually don't make generation. So Pepco, we don't actually own any generation. So we don't own solar, we don't own wind, we don't own coal. We're not allowed to actually own any sort of generation. So our part in this is the interconnection of helping to interconnect those renewable sources to the grid. But happy, we're actually happy to partner and share information because we're not a player in that space.
I'll say every utility that I have dealt with across the Mid-Atlantic, and especially Pepco, BG&E, Delmarva Power, and the rural co-ops that we've dealt with on the Eastern Shore, have been absolutely willing to try to figure something out that works. Like we've all either hinted around or talked about, right? In order to solve this problem of climate change, we all have to be rowing in the same direction. What direction that happens to be, whether you're nuclear, coal, kinetic, right? Maybe not coal, but it's all going to get us to the point where we have to figure this problem out. And it's kind of the nice thing that allows us of 3 different partners in the industry to be able to sit up here and talk about where we're going and how we get there. So it really does highlight the opportunity that Pepco and people like Will are putting out there is, hey, let's try something and let's do it. And frankly, right, every single time that we've gone to them and the University of Maryland and say, hey, we want to try this out, we've got nothing but enthusiastic support. Where that comes for me, kind of working on the farmland side, is really on 2 sides. So you're going to see the increased adoption of agrivoltaics, co-locating farming and generation, power generation. And that's going to be on the technical side. And that's going to be a little bit more on the crop side, trying to figure out what we are able to do here, raising crops more than just putting sheep underneath the panels or putting pollinators.
I was going to ask you about the added vertical of bioremediation and defunct industrial sites, such as the coal power plants that are being shut down right now in Maryland.
Sure. Yeah.
There's also, there's coal abandoned mines in Western Maryland, right across the street from Frostburg State University, which is mind-blowing, right? But there are also opportunities. So what is being done or what can be done? I think Maryland does have like a very unique opportunity. There's so many different landscapes and demographics that we could pilot these on, and like you said, University of Maryland's right down the street.
Yeah. No, I think it's a great question. I would even take it a step back further. There are so many incentives at the federal, state, and local level to turn these brown fields into bright fields, as we called them in the industry. And I personally love it because we're actively exploring an opportunity to take a retired landfill, 8 acres worth, and turn it into a community solar plant in West Tennessee. So it is something that we sit here and say, hey, there is all of this opportunity. Why aren't we using it? And it is the effort behind it is so collaborative from the government, from private industry, from public-owned utilities, that it is. I sit here and obviously I'm an optimist. I'm an enthusiast about this, but I would sit here and say all of us up here are going to say it's not a matter of if, but it's a matter of when. Does that answer your question?
Absolutely.
Great.
Can I go to Scott in the back first?
Leading into where you just went, could you share with us where the greatest impediments are, whether it's at federal, state, local, whether it's legislative or regulatory, to essentially get what it needs to tap in? With like fiber optics and all that kind of stuff, it's great, but it's that last mile they always talk about.
Sure, yeah.
What does it take to actually get to a farm, to a building? Where are the impediments that stop as many people tapping in and getting into the grid?
So I'm going to work big to small on that one. Big is it's either the governance, so permitting, and that just happens to be about 30% of your projects will fall out for one reason or another. Civil, wastewater, lack of infrastructure is one. The second half of this is especially on your larger facilities, and I'm talking way above the scale of anything that we're talking about today, those do generate a lot of public backlash that will stop, that will stop any sort of large solar development. You work your way down towards the middle size where we live, all three of us, and that really is the infrastructure that we talked a little bit about, and really what are the upgrades that it's going to take in order to deploy the next generation of solar, because we have had a power system that's been good for about 100 years, and it has been serving the community for that long. Unfortunately, we're moving into a new age, and so we are going to need to make that investment in order to make that connection. At a local level, frankly, it's not really a people or it really is just getting the material to be able to do it, and finding the people who want to do it. And day by day, we're finding that this is something that just continues to build momentum and is really in the forefront of people's minds.
Anything to add there, Will or Cindy?
It was great on my perspective. He hit every level, so thank you.
I wanted to mention that transformer upgrades can now be included in the tax credit. So of course speak to your accountant about that, but that's a big move in the right direction with the federal government, but we need more help. Will can't upgrade all the transformers, he just doesn't have the money to do it. And the utilities, they need help upgrading the grid to take all the power that we're going to generate from all the different forms available.
And I would say, 5-10 years ago, there wasn't enough solar penetration in our area that will force the amount of upgrades that are happening now. Mm-hmm. So you may have a neighbor that upgraded a decade ago and they didn't have to upgrade anything. And you live next door and now Pepco says you need to upgrade. And that's because everyone is starting to get solar, which is kind of forcing those upgrades. But we do have a working group proceeding with the Maryland Public Service Commission with a lot of great stakeholders to try to solve this problem and get in front of it. But definitely, I think the takeaway from that is investments are going to be needed to make in order to make this two-way grid where everyone can have solar and you see solar on every rooftop. The grid needs to look different, because what is happening is everyone is trying to send solar back to the grid, and that's what is requiring these upgrades.
It's good problems to have.
Yeah. I would just say also just an impediment is reliable, up-to-date data on some of the infrastructure, like Potomac, Edison, almost impossible to get reliable, up-to-date information that would accelerate solar deployment. BG as well. I have gotten good response from Pepco, but to mimic the speed, the velocity of the upgrade of these maps, hosting capacity maps specifically, will be really useful, because developers use that in order to make decisions on where they can deploy assets. And if a map is outdated by 3 months and you're doing a project and 3 months down the road you learn that that data was wrong, your project's gone now, or you have to really redevelop it, the economics. So that's a pressure that has to come from our side, because I'm not sure there's an incentive for them to do it. They're mandated to do it in certain states in New England, but I don't believe that exists.
Happy to talk with you offline too.
So back to the issue of upgrades and such. Number one, by the way, I'm on the distribution system planning working group at the PSC. So the question for Will is, what will it take for Pepco to be able to start investing in increasing the amount of capability? Is that going to need a new rate case? Is that going to need, what specifically?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I think there is a very complicated answer to that point, right? In terms of we want to invest in the system to ensure everyone has solar. Those investments cost money, and those investments means our customers' bills have to increase. And so we have to balance the need for those investments that are millions of dollars with the fact that we are in a post-pandemic world where folks just have trouble paying their bills today, right? We see that every day. So I think that's going to be, and that's what our Maryland Public Service Commission deals with, the fact that we know there needs to be, the Maryland Commission on Climate Change said there needs to be $1 billion spent to reach our clean energy goals. But who's going to pay that $1 billion, right? And so everyone has to collectively say, what's the pace do we need to go in to make these investments, and what's the appetite for the cost to be able to do so? So I think that's really is going to be the biggest balance. So we want to be able to do it, and if the commission says we can do it, at what level and at what pace, I think is really where the working group is going to find itself working towards.
Well,
Go
can I
ahead.
just add in for a second? I think one of the things that in terms of, like Will was saying, what we're starting to see nationwide that also is going to help in one fashion is when you start talking to especially the big developers, cost sharing mechanisms, like something that folks like at the commission and other entities can help where, maybe it's not so much the ratepayer paying, but how do we start talking with the bigger developers in terms of cost sharing? How can we meet in the middle point in which we can help their costs and they can also help in terms of what investment is being asked for. So I think we're starting to see that nationwide, it's not just Pepco, because people being really serious about different type of cost sharing mechanisms, people serious about
Great. Thank you, Alex.
Michael, you had a question.
Yeah. A lot of this question for you, Will. A lot of the conversation today has naturally focused on the distribution grid and kind of local operations and putting more clean energy around our local communities. Putting large amounts of clean energy on the grid, it also involves the transmission grid. Is that something that Pepco is actively looking at in terms of looking at new innovative grid enhancing technologies to really help get more capacity out of the existing transmission grid that we have today?
Yeah, that's a great question. The regional transmission grid is run by PJM, so they're the regional transmission operator. They have the responsibility for looking at the balance mix between how much clean generation needs to flow into our grid. And so I do think that is an opportunity, right? I don't think I don't think it's a prohibitor or a limiting factor. I know within the PJMQ there's a lot of great solar projects that are going to come online. Maryland has a goal right now. I believe they want 100% renewable energy entering the state by 2045, if I'm not mistaken. And so every year you get more renewable energy coming online that's connected to the transmission grid based on that. Will there need to be some level of transmission upgrades, right? Absolutely, especially when you talk in terms of like offshore wind, right? I think that's a different problem than solar, right? Because in most cases solar is inland and you have transmission located nearby. Sure, you may have to extend it, but when you talk about offshore wind, you have to run miles of transmission lines, and so that can impact the speed in terms of how Maryland adopts offshore wind. But there's been some really innovative legislation policies in that space too.
So how resilient are these financing programs that are based on tax credits to political wins in the future election?
Oh dear. Can the current federal tax credits for solar be overturned? I mean, I'm 42 and I don't know what we're gonna see in the rest of my lifetime. Like, I'm surprised all the time. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't know how safe our current infrastructure is right now from political change.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, things change all the time. That's a really good question. I wish I had the answer.
I can.
Oh yeah,
jump in
please.
here.
Please,
So
please help me out here.
I was at a entrepreneurship dinner with one of the panelists. One of the people there was the director of renewable energy for Wells Fargo, and the word that he was getting from his folks on the Hill was that the big beneficiaries of a lot of the tax credits from the Inflation Reduction Act have been in states that generally you would think would be voting to repeal that. There's just no appetite. Now, I think you're probably got a really good guess of whether or not they're going to get renewed at the end of the decade when they're scheduled. The tax credits are scheduled to be repealed. But I mean, we've got 30, 40 people in the room. You're probably going to get 40 opinions on that, and we just don't know. But as for right now, I think you're pretty stable at least the federal level, and frankly, I think the state level is
Well, the state is,
locked in. Yeah.
our state is safer
Yeah.
than federal, I would say.
And I would say from the Green Bank perspective locally, there's a lot that's solidified with the county directly.
Oh, our county is very progressive. Yeah, you mentioned the state's goal to be using zero carbon by 2045. We're 2035, so we're ahead. We're ahead of the state in reducing carbon emissions, but also in adopting building energy performance standards. We're a little bit ahead of the state as well. Is that right?
I think that is pouring rain right now.
There are, I will say, there's some there's some policy experts here. If you end up bumping into them, they'll probably give you a more informed perspective as well.
Yeah, one other thing to add is that the federal government is right now deploying money for solar through Solar for All, and indirectly through a couple other mechanisms that are coming through the GGRF, the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund. And so hopefully we can get them deployed sooner rather than later. I believe they have to be deployed to the state of Maryland by September. So those should be safe for now. But like I said, like things I used to think were safe. I mean, what's safe now? Who knows?
I want to point out that technological advances, if they do occur in, for example, the efficiency of solar panels. Let's say over 5 years, solar panel production of electricity increases 25% because of new chemical coatings or whatever. The whole economics that we're thinking right now are off. It would make sense to put it on the roof of a townhouse then, even if it doesn't make sense now. And you don't need to worry about tax credits because you get so much electricity out of that new technology solar panel that will more than offset any loss you might have from not getting a tax credit in the future if such event were to happen with tax credits. I mean, the whole world changed radically with technology. Northwestern University Material Science Department years ago was printing solar coatings on plain sheets of paper using typical office printers, the sort of thing you have in your home today, where they would coat a sheet of paper and it hook up some electrical wires, put it out in the sun, and it was generating electricity. This is, the technology hasn't spread just yet, where the coating on the side of your building or your windows are solar panels. Sometime in the future you'll have windows like this, and there'll be a couple of electrical wires hooked up to each one, and those windows will be serving as a solar panel, generating electricity that you'll be using in the building. We're just not there yet, but sometime it will occur.
That sounds like your solar windows. I will say I'm a little bit biased when I say this. I think we're pretty safe. I had a patent discovery, fun fact. I filed a patent discovery at Corning Incorporated in 2008 for organic applications or sealants of organic applications of thin film solar panels. Has not unfortunately come to market today. So that is 16 years, I think.
But I'll point out, I once sat next to Corning Glassware's energy buyer at a conference.
Nice.
She
Cool.
buys their electricity for their manufacturing plants. She buys $110 million worth of electricity a year for theirs.
It really is an exciting time to be alive. My money is on fusion, so yeah.
I want to go ahead and wrap there. I want to give you guys an opportunity, first of all, if there are any anything that we should know about, any new rollouts of any programs, any new events that are coming up, anything that I should give you guys an opportunity to talk about.
Yeah, just really quickly on my end, again, this is, for me, it's being from Washington, D.C. is really personal to ensure that our most vulnerable communities have access to this technology to be able to take advantage of it. So one of the things that we started to do, we work with solar developers to give them space at our downtown headquarters in Washington, D.C., We have community solar at our service center in Benning Road in Northeast Washington, D.C. We have solar on our rooftop, and 100% of all that solar goes to low to moderate income communities. So that's just, some of the ways we're trying to get back. So we are looking to invest in projects like that that have that community benefit.
Awesome.
We stay tuned. We have some new residential programs coming out, and at least one new commercial program coming out, both for solar. Until the programs are finalized, we can't talk about it. You'll just have to check our website or subscribe to our newsletter.
Awesome.
It's a good newsletter.
These guys will be around. Pepco and Green Bank both have tables in the front. Justin has his business cards in the front. Please feel free to connect. Please feel free also to eat and to drink. There is plenty available for everybody. And then I just want to say a special thank you to our panelists. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for bringing